sons of former slaves and the sons of former slave owners will they be able to sit down together at the table of brotherhood. I have a dream that one day, even the state of Mississippi, a state sweltering with the heat of injustice, sweltering with the heat of oppression, will be transformed into an oasis of freedom and justice. I have a dream. My 4 little children will one day live in a nation where they will not be judged by the color of their skin, but by the content of their character. I have a dream today.
You're in tune to Roots FM 96.1 on the FM band. As we go right into MEC, we talk Tuesdays with, of course, Mr. Tavares.
Thank you very much. Good morning, we're listening and watching from around the world and the Eastern Caribbean. This is Roots 96.1 FM, the voice of the voice, that's the voice of the inner city. We have breaking news out of New York City, where multiple shootings and people getting shot and all kind of thing. You know, for the past couple of weeks, there has been shooting right across the length and breadth of the United States. You know, and yet they said that Jamaica is the murder capital of the world. Anyway, with me this morning, I have opposition spokesperson on transport, Mr. Mikael Phillips. We're going to speak about how can we organize the transport sector better. We're going to speak about the pumping billions and billions of dollars into JUTC and taxpayers' money is going down the drain like butter. Mr. Mikael Phillips is the Member of Parliament for Northwest. Am I correct?
Yes, you are.
Manchester?
Yes, yes.
He's also the VP for the People's National Party?
No, former vice president.
Oh, former vice president. Okay, good.
Yes.
A very good friend of mine. Mr. Phillips, welcome to Make We Talk again, sir.
Thank you for having me. And a good morning to your listeners, those viewing and those online listening.
Yes, sir. Mr. Phillips, with what is going on done by the Transport Authority, where the taxi drivers, they pay to get their license, sir, and they have to wait how many days before they can get the road license? And the Transport Authority is saying to them that the receipt they have is not their road license. So what they expect the police to do is to stop the commuters and take away the taxi drivers and take away the cars. What is your views on that, sir? And if you were the Minister of Transportation, what would you have done differently?
Well, one of the things that have been hampering the Transport Authority and the public transport sector itself is just the lack of foresight. And, you know, one of the unfortunate things is that the Transport Authority Act that is supposed to be reviewed was supposed to be tabled at the same time as the regulations of the Road Traffic Act itself. That seems not to be happening, or it has not happened, because we have had the regulations for the Road Traffic Act tabled in the House just before we went on a break for the budget debate. We're yet to see the Transport Authority Act tabled. Now, in that new Transport Authority Act, there's supposed to be if it is not in it, then a recommendation will be made by the opposition that we stagger the renewal times for the operators, to have thousands of operators coming in the same period, even though that the Transport Authority has off sites, doesn't spell well. They have gone even further by charging a late fee of $10,000 for those who come in with their renewal after the end of March. They charged them a $10,000 late fee. The Transport Authority said that they're giving a 2-week moratorium on that late fee, but yet still persons were still being charged that $10,000 late fee. We in my own sectoral presentation last week, and the opposition, we have said that it is unjust to charge this late fee, despite the time frame that was or has been given to operators to renew. The same reason why they had stalled or stopped charging that late fee during the pandemic, during the heights of the pandemic. The situation is even worse now on operators than it was then, because in 2020 you didn't have the increase in fuel prices as you're seeing now, the uncertainty of the dollar, just the cost, and I put it in a simple way that the operators themselves have been subsidizing the fares for the commuting public, seeing that there has been no true policy direction from the government or the Transport Authority in the survival of the public transport sector.
So is it? Well, this is my views. Is it illegal for the Transport Authority to literally collect the taxi drivers and bus drivers money for the road license, and they have to wait so long, and when they go on the road, police harass them and take away their vehicle? Who is going to pay those bus and taxi drivers for loss of wages?
Well, it is unjust, and I don't think it is legal, because it cannot be. If the government entity that is supposed to be issuing the license have not been able to issue it on a timely basis, like you submit you pay your money now, you come back out with that certificate at the same time, then the receipt that you have paid for the renewal should suffice as the certificate until you get that in hand. Again, I think that because of the lack of policy direction and lack of leadership within the ministry, that you see that continuing to happen. But it is unjust, and I would say that it is illegal for the police to be prosecuting those who have renewed, and I'm making it clear, those who have renewed, pay the renewal fee, have the receipt, but have not received the certificate from the Transport Authority. I would say that it is unjust and illegal for the police to be prosecuting those individuals.
But you know something, Mr. Phillips? If the bus and taxi drivers has no one to go to pertaining to this, sir, because the Minister of Transportation is on the platform, on all the platforms that the taxi drivers have, and they have been saying, they have been ranting and raving pertaining to it, and you don't hear nothing from the minister.
I would say that I've not gotten the impression from this administration that they are taking the matter of public transport seriously, or the Ministry of Transport seriously. Public transport it forms a large part of your economy and the success of any economy. It ought not to be treated as a third child or a stepchild within the family. And we have not treated it as such. Hence the ad hoc way in how we do policy, the lack of attention that we give to the Transport Authority or the public transport sector itself. It needs to be put front and center of any developing country, because it is a mode of which growth is brought into an economy. It is how you transport goods from point A to point B, how it is that you transport your population to school, from school, and back home. It is how it is that we provide efficient ways of moving tourists when they come to our island.
Yes.
So it forms a large platform within our economy, but we don't treat it as such. And what I am saying as the opposition spokesperson is that we need to put transport front and center, as we do any other sector, as we are doing now for the BPO, as we are doing for the hotel and tourist sector. We need to put transport in the same category and give it the same treatment as we are giving other industries in our country. It's the only way we're going to grow this economy and to have a free movement of people. A large percentage, I would say the majority of those who live in the KMT, or the Kingston Metropolitan Transport Area region, needs public transport.
Yes.
But we don't treat it that we are satisfying the majority. We treat it as if there are only hustlers in a sector, and we treat it as if, say, boy, we're going to treat them like hustlers. But each person that you see have a taxi out on the road is an investor in the economy who is paying taxes also, just like the man who is sitting down at the Bank of Jamaica or at NCB or any other industry in the country. And we ought to treat him. And I'm not just saying this because we're on live radio and
yes.
streaming, but it is something that I've recognized that is stunting the growth of the transport sector. And I'm not just speaking of public transport. I'm speaking of transportation generally, movements of goods and people, that we have not treated it as it is an integral part of our economy.
Because some of the, majority of the bus and taxi drivers have this thing, in the back of their head that the government has no respect for them. They treat them as if they're nothing. Well,
you see, in the public transport sector, what you have are the good suffering for the bad. It's just like in politics. They broad brush all of us as thieves when all of us are not thieves. Yeah? In politics, right? So it is a similar thing with the public transport sector. So the good suffer for the bad. And I think that there are more honest operators out there than there are dishonest operators out there. And I think what has happened in the sector itself is that the sector itself has not been united as they ought to be. There could be a louder voice than they are now, but they are not united as a body. And if they were united, they are divided. And there's no joke about that. They are divided. And they could have gotten more out of just policy, out of the sector itself by government intervention. They could have gotten more, but they have not because of that, how divided they are.
I am talking to opposition spokesperson on transport, Mr. Mikael Phillips. I see I have a call coming in from the president of TADS, Edgerton Newman. Let us see if I can get him back. Well, no, not Mr. Edgerton Newman, Mr.
I was going to call.
Yes, sir. Good morning. Welcome to Make We Talk. We have Mr. Mikael Phillips on. This is Mr. Nelson from Montego Bay.
Amelia speaking.
Yes, sir. Go ahead, sir.
All right. No, just give me a minute and I'll call you back.
Okay, no problem.
Yes.
Yes. We have some operators who they're very disgruntled pertaining to how the Transport Authority dealt with them or dealing with them at the moment. But
I was just going to say, this is not just a new treatment that they're getting. It is year after year after year. And hence why I say that the lobby groups within the sector itself needs to get more organized. You have one set of persons, going in a direction, and then another set of person moving in a different direction. So, the ministry and ministers tend to just pick them off one by one, is what I see. I've been seeing happening. But in my presentation in Parliament, I believe that the Transport Authority has not lived up to its expectations. And why I say that is that the Transport Authority, who is a regulator, it is my firm belief that he should not be the same entity who is prosecuting at the same time, enforcing the regulations. Huh? It has become an entity of revenue. You ought to build out its research capacity, that coming from this research, that it should be able to help to develop policy to ensure that the sector itself is one that is dealt with in a proper manner. So what happens is that it collects revenues, it issues the license, but it is not doing the work itself that it ought to, in ensuring that it can help the government to have proper research in seeing where it is that the need is, where it is that we have an oversupply of seed, where it is that we need to put in new routes, things like that can drive policy, is what we see the Transport Authority as the regulator in the sector. Again, I'll say the regulator ought not to be the enforcer. I think you have to build out an arm, just like you will have in New York City, where you have the Metro police that deal with the public transport in New York City. You probably need to build out something like that, major town centers, a Portmore, Montego Bay, Kingston. You need to build out the capacity of the police force itself in dealing with the enforcement of traffic breach. Not only for the public transport sector, but for general traffic violations that needs to be done. The thing is that we have to get back some order in our society. And if the new Road Traffic Act that is going to be coming to Parliament, the regulations, or is now sitting on the table in Parliament for us to debate, even with that being passed, if there's not enforcement of the laws, then that Road Traffic Act is going to be just a mere words on paper. Yeah? And so something has to happen to break the back of the camel. But we can't continue the way that we are now as a society. That is a free for all. And those who pay their just dues, those who are renewing their license as public transport operators, then you have twice as many illegal operators doing the same, providing the same service without any enforcement taking place. No society can continue in this way, right? And in this instance, you have the good suffering for the bad. But the Transport Authority ought to be regulating, not enforcing, but ought to be doing more for the public transport sector than they are doing right now. That's my view.
We're here talking to opposition spokesperson on transport. If you want to call in, you can call Roots FM 876-225-9478, or you can call 876-782-8235. That's 876-8235, or Roots FM 876-225-9478 to, speak to Mr. Phillips pertaining to what is going on in the transport sector. Mr. Phillips. Conversation. Yeah, you can join the conversation, yes. I think you should become a radio host too, sir. Do you think that the transport when it comes on to bus fare, you think it should go back to the OUR? Why is it the OUR is the one who is doing it?
Well, the OUR said that they didn't want it again, but I do believe that it should be the OUR that should be regulating the bus fares. Yes, that's our belief. I don't think that it should be the political directorate that. Well, if you look at the law, if you're really to look at the law, it is not really the political directorate that should be. It should be the transport authority that should be making the recommendation. What we have done is make it the norm that the minister and the government itself that decides when it should or should not. I've said time and time again that I think that it should be taken out of the hands of the political directorate. I know it is a political hot button, really, because the increase in bus fares has had two sides to it. It has those who are operators who would want to see more in their revenue stream, but you have the traveling public also that in times may not be able to pay for that increase, but is forced to because they have no other means of transportation. So it has an inflationary effect on the economy itself and for the traveling public. But it ought to be just like any other body that is being regulated. I do believe that it should be given back to an entity such as the OUR. It may not be the OUR, but an entity just like the OUR.
And do you believe that the taxi drivers and bus drivers deserve a proper fare increase?
Yes, I do believe. As I said before, it's like a double-edged sword, because you have to also look at what it is that is affordable to the traveling public. And in a time like this, when inflation is going at 7 and 8 and 9%, near 10%, the disposable income for individuals is really depleted. So even though that there needs to be an increase to the operators, you have to look at what it is affordable to the traveling public. And that is the reason why we have been saying to the government, you have to find creative ways in how it is that you reduce the income stream from that the government brings in from the sector itself. How is it that they can cap the ad valorem tax on fuel, even though it may be benefiting the wider society, but I mean, everybody's feeling the pinch at the pumps, but the transport operators will benefit from it. How is it that you can, cap by reducing even the late fee? Yes. And we are saying that even though persons are late, a 2-week moratorium is not adequate enough. If you give them a longer period of time, once they have not met that moratorium period, then you start prosecuting. But even though that they have been given a 2-month period to do the renewal, believe me, it is tough out there on just general business people, small business people. So even though you're giving them the 2 months, there are many situations. I mean, I as a traveling officer myself, I have seen my gas bill move leaps and bounds. So I can just imagine the operators themselves who have not gotten a meaningful increase in bus fares. Yes. So the government itself has to be creative in how they approach this. We understand why you have not increased the bus fares, but you have to find a way how it is that there's no increase in the operating costs to the same operators that you have asked to hold straight.
I see where I have with me on the phone the president of the Transport Sustainable Development Services, Egerton Newman. Morning, Mr. Newman. Welcome to Make We Talk.
Good morning, Papa Jeffrey. How you doing, man?
You make me sound like Mutty now. I have with me this morning Sir Mikael Phillips.
Yes. Morning, MP Phillips. How you doing?
Morning, Sir Newman. I'm giving thanks.
Good, good. Bless you. Now,
Blessings, man.
a couple of things, Jeffrey, to every time I want to say,
You're breaking up, Mr. Newman. Stay one place.
MP Phillips. Now, yes, I think I am. I think I am, Jeffrey. No, Mr. Phillips, a couple of things. I heard you speak in the matter of OUR, and that is a hot dumpling in my organization. And you recall in 2014, 13, 14, it was the People's National Party who took away the OUR overnight from the Transport Authority. You're now saying that the best place to have the Transport Authority is under the remit in terms of fare setting of the OUR. I concur with you on that, but why?
I was saying, even if it is not the OUR, an entity such as the OUR, I understand, there are some reasons why it was taken from the OUR, but my firm belief that it should not be left in the hands of the political directorate. And that's my main reason. I think that
I agree with you, sir. Fully. It's unfortunate that because of a court case at that time, it was removed.
Hold on, Mr. Newman, hold your thoughts for me. We're going to take a quick commercial break here and make we talk. We're speaking to opposition spokesperson on transport, Mr. Mikael Phillips. We're going to take a quick break. We'll be right back here and make we talk on Roots 96.1 FM. Call in and join the discussion with us this morning. We'll be right back.
I have a dream that one day this nation will rise up and live out the true meaning of its creed.
At MOJ Ministry of Justice, come access quality service to keep order within the nation. We put together good legislation, legal aid to your pocket. A little is child diversion for you to need expertise. Victim service, we help you cope with grief. Restorative justice, build back the peace. No matter where you come from, how we say justice for all Jamaicans. MOJ Ministry of Justice, come access quality service.
MOJ, justice to the people of Jamaica.
Security guards must be certified to get licensed to work, says the government. Don't hesitate, don't delay. Get certified and enter a prosperous career with local and City and Guilds International certification in security personnel in 6 to 8 weeks at Distinction College, an approved City and Guilds Center endorsed by the PSRA with locations in Kingston, Spanish Town, and Ocho Rios. Start classes very soon. No subjects required, no experience required, no entrance test, no age limits. Call 356-4167.
Hi, I'm Sharon.
Hi, I'm Marcia.
I'm Adrian. Join us this and every Wednesday morning for Extraordinary Abilities on Roots 96.1 FM. Join us for news, views, and interviews with extraordinary people. Extraordinary Abilities every Wednesday morning, 9 a.m. to 10 a.m. on your extraordinary radio station, Roots 96.1 FM. It's going to be fun, informative, and educational, but most of all, it will be extraordinary. Extraordinary.
I have a dream that one day this nation will rise up and live out the true meaning.
Welcome back to Make We Talk here on Roots 96.1 FM. We are talking to opposition spokesperson on transport, Mr. Mikael Phillips. We have online President of TADS, Edgerton Newman. Mr. Newman, you're asking a question to the Woodley gentleman.
Yes, Minister. I think I got the answer there, but I want to move to another question quickly, Jeffrey. The issue of, first of all, I want to commend Mr. Phillips on his presentation in Parliament. Not very often I commend the opposition spokesperson when they made a presentation. But I want to say Mr. Phillips made a very good presentation. He did not only focus on JUTC, which is his norm, but this year he really looked at the entire public transport sector. And you know, we are a little bit selfish, Mr. Phillips. Mr. Phillips, we are a little bit selfish when we speak, when you speak.
Mr. Newman?
TC and not on the entire sector. But this time, hear me?
Yes, I'm hearing you now. I'm hearing
you.
I thought to drop into a pothole.
But this time around, they did justice to the sector, Mr. Phillips. No, the question I want to ask is related to transport. This time of the year, we always, for the 20 years I've been in the sector, this time of the year, we always have a problem. What would you do better in terms of policy, transport authority, to have a smooth running renewal period every year at this time?
Well, as I said earlier, Mr. Newman, is that has been proposed is looking at the renewal period for the operators themselves and staggering it instead of everybody renewing at the same time. Huh? I think that there has to be a way that is found to accommodate everybody, because you don't only have the transport operators renewing at this period of time. You have those that have that have the CC plates. You have all of the heavy equipments and all of those that are renewing at the same time, even though that they have the off-sites during renewal. I feel that at this time in particular, more than any other time, just the heavy burden of the increased fuel costs, just inflation on the sector itself, that some consideration should be given, or some flexibility should be given to those within the sector, right? The argument is that operators have I think it's a 2-month period to do the renewal. But what you end up finding also are those that are waiting on the last minute to do the renewal, which converges on the transport authority to do their renewal at that point in time. But I think the best way of dealing with that is seeing how, just like you do on your birthday for renewal, or an anniversary date should be found, so that we don't have everybody renewing at the same time, is our first step in dealing with the matter.
I would just come into that, Mr. Phillips, because I know that former Minister Montague made that recommendation in his 16-point plan of action in 2017 for renewal to be done on the birthday. And I think it's a very good suggestion, proposal. And I think it's something we should work on now, understanding what is happening as we speak, with the cars being towed away. I think, would you suggest that could be the official way to go, now?
Hold on for me, please, Sir Phillips. Mr. Newman, can Mr. Phillips answer the question while you listen, sir? Because I think we have some more people calling in.
Thank you very much. I really want to run. Thank you very much, Jeffrey.
Okay. Go ahead, Mr. Phillips.
What I would say to Mr. Newman's question is that obviously you have the support of the opposition on it. I think it is a smart way to go. As we're waiting on the Transport Authority Act, the amendments for a new act to basically come in being. So I'm hoping that is in it. If it is not, it is something that we will make suggestion if the government is not suggesting that. But for certain, I think that is the way to go.
Mr. Phillips, when you have taxi drivers have to be paying for because tire gone up, the front end parts going up left, right, and center, to service the car is going sky high. If you become the next Minister of Transportation and Mining, would you have an organization where, in other words, a company or maybe the government can bring in the tires and sell the taxi and bus operators at a reasonable price?
Well, the government itself operates a tire company in Jamaica, Ultimate Tire, which basically started out as it is a subsidiary of the JUTC, which started out by vulcanizing and retreading the older tires for the JUTC in a way to help to save money for the JUTC and the government. They themselves have now started to purchase tires to sell to the JUTC, and they're also providing the service of retread to the open market. But what our research has shown us is that because it's a subsidiary of the JUTC, they sell at a higher price than the open market, which is now not saving the JUTC any money. And I'm a firm believer that not because an entity is a government entity, that it should have a monopoly on any other government entity. And that it should allow the JUTC to go to the open market to purchase tires. I don't believe that the government itself should get into answering your question, should get into the issue of the purchase of tires to sell to the open market. What the government can do is to cap the CIF at the ports to ensure that the cost of tires, be it for whichever sector, that is once that comes in at a reasonable price, right? Because it's easy to identify, a person coming to purchase a set of tires. Once, just like with the $25,000 voucher that the government is giving, said if you don't renew, then you're not able to benefit from that $25,000 voucher.
But Mr. Phillips, as you touch on the voucher, how many of these taxi drivers going to really get it, sir? Because when they were giving out the care packages, majority of the taxi and bus operators didn't get a dime, and you hear nothing more about it.
They are, when I asked the question of the Minister of Finance, he said that it is only those who renew within the renewal period that will receive the voucher. I'm just awaiting some time to be able to ask the question of the Minister of Finance or the Transport Authority, because it is being administered through the Transport Authority, how many operators actually benefit from it. And even though it is a step in the right direction, there has to be a more sustainable solution found, or for over a longer period of time, to assist operators, but just generally Jamaicans who have to be buying petrol at the pump, how it is that we can soften the impact of the inflation on fuel. I hear the story from the minister saying that those who can afford it should not get any subsidy. But believe me, it is touching everybody. It is touching. It has an inflationary effect on food items too. Because a man who has to transport his goods from his factory in Kingston to Montego Bay is going to put that additional fuel cost on the cost of his goods when it goes to the retailers. So, the bulk of your middle management, traveling officers, your teachers, your nurses are the ones that are being affected with this fuel cost. So that's why we're saying to them, find some other creative way. But a one-off $25,000 is 2 days of petrol for these operators. 2 days.
You mean one
what
day,
happened to
Mr.
the other 300 plus days of the year?
True.
Come on, man.
We're gonna switch gear now, Mr. Phillips, because I don't understand what is going on with the JUTC. Why do we keep pumping billions and billions of dollars in a company that not making any profit. You have managers at JUTC, managers for the indicator, managers for the tire, managers for the bumper that's falling off of the road, managers for the wiper, managers for the headlamp. You have managers for every almighty God thing in that company. So don't you think, from an accounting point of view, if we reduce the overhead cost of these managers and this, because, I mean, I'm going to say something and maybe you're going to say to me, Mr. Tavares, don't say it. Political parties in this country continue putting people who help them to run in positions into the JUTC. And that is why the JUTC is running at a loss. The taxi operators and bus operators has nobody to give them any money. But the JUTC have taxpayers' money pumping in it. There are some dilapidated bus running on the road. And the police don't stop them. But the poor pauperizing taxi drivers, and don't get me wrong, some taxi drivers have no respect. But Mr. Phillips, how can we continue pumping money into an organization that has 11 managers and I make no money? What are they doing?
All right, let me start out this way. We cannot afford for the JUTC to die. Huh? I do believe that the purpose of the JUTC was one that came out of good sense for the purpose that it originally, that government ought to have a hand in the public transport sector, especially in your major towns. What I think needs to happen is that we have been running the JUTC in a way, shoring it up with taxpayers' resources. I've consistently said that if JUTC was a private entity, if it was another entity under government, it would have been wound up a long time ago. The board itself fired and management held accountable, right? I think that there needs to be an overall research done on the public transport, and especially the Kingston metropolitan region, in the amount of seats that are required, because the JUTC itself has a license. And I've been saying that similar to those investors in the public transport, if they're in contravention of their license, they would have been prosecuted or the license taken away from them. We should hold the JUTC to the same standards. Yeah? And if you don't hold them to the same standards, then what you're doing is that you're making a mockery of the system itself. And then they are not forced to operate as a proper business, right? Yes. So let's start from there. I'm sure that the government is only right now assuming how many seats they need in the KMTR, right? What is happening now is that the JUTC is down to half of its fleet. In any other business, you have to downsize to your operation. What we have done is to keep the same amount of employees for half amount of buses, and I'm not advocating to fire people, right? That's not it. What I'm advocating for is for an entity that we can justify to the taxpayers of subsidizing, right? So you're down to half its fleet. You're down to half of your fare box. You're spending the same amount of money for repairs, right? But even though we blame the management of the JUTC, it is government's policy that has given them basket to carry water. Yeah.
So what you're
yeah, go ahead.
What you're saying to me then that maybe I'm misunderstanding you, I don't know.
Right.
Because if the government is giving them basket to carry water, you're saying to me then that the JUTC is there not to make a profit then?
No, the JUTC was not there to make a profit. There's no public transport system in the world that makes a profit. What the JUTC is required to do is to make at least 80% of its operating costs. 80%, so it can pay its salary, can pay its bills, with only 20% of that coming as subsidy from the taxpayers. That is what is required of the JUTC. Huh? But as it is now, the taxpayers is subsidizing 90% of the operation of the JUTC, when it is supposed to be the reverse. 80% of its operating expenses should come from its fare box, right? And 20% come from subsidy from the government and the taxpayers of the country. As it is now, it is only 10% coming from its fare box and 90% coming from the taxpayers. So we need to reverse it.
Then Mr. Phillips, MP Phillips, let us be realistic here. If it is not providing for its operational costs, it can't pay out, it can't do nothing. And you have managers in there. No, people not vexing, but it's the truth. A taxpayer money. You have people in there, have drivers that drive them. What sort of nonsense is going on in this country, sir? And taxpayers, that money could go towards putting on a wing on KPH, building schools in this country. But you have people sitting in there day after day, night after night, not doing one single thing. The fuel, I heard Minister Shaw speak about it, where fuel is being taken away, people that thief the fuel, and yet you have managers sitting in there, Mr. Phillips.
And again, I'm going to say this. Yeah? I'm not taking away the blame from management. But again, if you have a school with a principal and you allow the teachers to run it how they want to with the students, what do you think will come of that school?
Huh? It go down and they're not fair to the principal.
I soon call it back, yeah. And what I'm saying is that government's policy is critical on the survival of any government entity and just our society overall. 90% of your buses in the JUTC is anywhere between 15 to 18 years old. Between 10 to 18 years old. The JUTC is only 20 year old.
So what are we doing?
You are requesting so like any other factory. If D&G was running D&G of the 70s without retooling, they would not be an efficient factory to be exporting the volumes that they're exporting now. So it's the same thing with your buses. You're spending more on parts because of the age of the buses. And we have been saying that you have to relook at the model that you have of the JUTC now. Cut the cloth to fit the body, but also see how best with data that you can make it a more efficient, but you have to invest in it. Not just human capital, but just fixed assets too. You have to invest in it. So when the government is making a big thing about bringing in 50 buses, I wasn't so bright at maths in school, but you need 450 buses to at least bring in at least 60% to 70% of your revenue to be able to deal with your operating expenses. Right? You're down to 200, 220 buses now. If you bring 50 buses, that you're only coming up to 250, you're still short 200. You're still short 200 buses. So the question that the government needs to answer, how long do they think it will take to bring the fleet up to at least 400? Because until then, they can't take the operators off the routes that the JUTC have a license for, because they have to find a way to provide the seat shortfall that the JUTC has created. Because the public has to move. That is why they're not prosecuting persons out there. Because of the lack of foresight and policy direction from the government. That is why you are having chaos on the road. Because they can't prosecute, they don't want to blame themselves. So what them do? Them stop going out on the road and upholding the rule of law. That is what's happening out there.
And
so, go ahead.
And when you have I lost my train of thought here. When at the end of the year,
it's just a lot to think. But the thing is, it is going to take time for us to bring back the sector, to bring back just law, just order in our society. We have to know what is the destination that we want to reach to. Right? We have done it before as a country. And then decide on how it is we get to that destination. If it is that we want an efficient transport sector, one with rules and regulation, one that everybody follow the letter of the law, where we provide adequate seating and a respectable public transport sector for the traveling public. If that is the destination, then all parties just need to come and sit down and see how the best route, not just the technocrats, but even those that are involved in the sector, because they are key to the success of it. So if there's not a partnership between government and government's policy and those who are that we're trying to regulate, then the thing not going to work, Virgin. It's not going to work.
Mr. Phillips,
we have a far way to go.
Yes, and I know you have to go also, because you have to go and look after your people down by Manchester.
Manchester, Northwestern, and we have Parliament today too. So
yes,
yeah.
I'm going to let you go, because but give me 2 minutes, because I don't have enough time. Just 2 minutes or a minute of what would you see, or where do you see the transport sector going, and what can you say to the poor pauperizing bus and taxi drivers out there who are feeling it?
I'm not inciting any demonstration or anything like that. But I think that the sector itself, be it a PMP administration or a GLP administration, needs to get themselves organized. That's first and foremost. You can't have 40 different or 50 different entities trying to sit at the table saying carrying a different message. It will just not succeed. I think that the operators need to demand more of the transport authority than just to issue license and to collect fees. I think that the operators themselves need to come together and put an alternative to the policy that is there now. That's what any investor would do. And I think that the sector itself needs to look at itself as a business and not just a hustle.
Yes.
I think that the government in itself, in guiding and leading the sector, needs to go back to the drawing board and come with something that is more meaningful than we having to just go out there and ask boy, to don't bother charge this late fee or don't bother or, enforcement. There ought to be more in policy coming from the government itself in dealing with transport, not only public transport, but transport. You're talking about development of roads, you're talking about tolls, you're talking about how easy it is to go from point A to point B. I think we need to move away from just building roads to say that I built this stretch of road, but building them in a meaningful way, quality roads that serves the traveling public better. And I'm going to end by saying the government needs to go back to the drawing board with the issue of the cost of petrol. It is not rich people alone that they say can pay for it and should not. Those who can pay should pay. But I'm telling you that the bulk of Jamaicans have been feeling it at the pump. And in my estimation, the situation is going to get worse. Government needs to go back to the drawing board and come back to the people.
Thank you, opposition spokesperson on transport and mining. And I think you have housing in your portfolio now?
Yes, I am housing, transport, and works.
And works. Maybe I can get a job when I get in.
Ah, boy, I'm telling you. But I want us to have the conversation on housing one day so we can.
Yes. What I'm thinking about having a program on a Sunday evening. I'll let you know what's going on.
Yes, man. Not a problem.
All right. Thank you very much, opposition spokesperson.
Thanks for having me. And all the,
you're welcome.
And a blessing week for the rest of the week for yourself and the team and for your listeners.
Thank you so much, Mr. Phillips.
Thanks for having me. Bye-bye.
Opposition spokesperson on transport, Mr. Mikael Phillips. It is now 12 o'clock in Kingston City, Jamaica, 1 o'clock in Fort Lauderdale, Florida. I am Jeffrey Tavares saying thank you all for coming on. But before I go, I am asking the Labor and Social Security Department, please, in the name of God, send the tracking number to the poor old people them phone now. They continue going down there to get tracking number. They go down there, they don't get no tracking number. It's same way if the money transfer place can send the tracking numbers out to the people to go and collect the money. Come on, man. We must do better than that. We live in 21st century Jamaica. And this is where I say so long from here. Thank you all for listening. Thank you all for being a part of this. Thanks to my producer, Owen Brown and Dudley Thompson. Thank you very much. This is Jeffrey Tavares saying so long until you hear my voice again, returning you to the studios of Roots 96.1 FM, the best thing since sliced bread.
I have a dream that one day this nation will rise up and live out the true meaning of its creed. We hold these truths to be self-evident that all men are created equal.
Get the real inner city community news and be informed. You can do all that and more on City Beat, Monday to Friday at 12:45.
Pastor? Hello, Pastor, are you there? Oh, Lord, it looks like she's gone.